Hello, I'm Steve Lentini. Welcome to my podcast, Different Thinking for Different Times. Season 6, Episode 22. So, people ask me about the Acorn Brain, right? How did I come up with it? Why did I come up with it? A couple of things. One is that when I flatlined on November 18th, 2002, none of this little voice in my head, none of that thinking went with me. It doesn't go with us, at least in my experience, because I'm not trying to convince you of anything. There was no chatter. There was not that insidious little voice suggesting all kinds of things, right? Before that moment, of course, it was judging events and people and talking to me about how I should view myself, how certain of my trainings went, or the speeches I gave, the talks I gave, or the books I wrote. It was constantly judging others, wanting me to be right about certain conditions or certain things, maybe even politics or religion. And none of that went with me on what's next, into what's next, right? What I now say we should call death, we should just say, hey, we go from this to that to what's next. And of course, there's sadness. We miss others that leave this existence, but we have no control over it. Very little control. And the hubris that humanity has and humans have is we want to be right. And we love that part of our existence. We believe our thinking, we believe our brain. And what I'm suggesting, based on my experience and my 22 years of work since, is that our job is to overcome that brain and to expand our thinking to mirror what we live in, called a universe, a limitless universe. And that's very hard for our brain, right? Because the idea of limitless, by the way, gives something infinite definition in our mind. Limitless means, well, it's something somewhere, like a ball, or even infinite universe. Infinite universe is an idea that's very hard to comprehend. So our job is to overcome this small-minded thinking in life and to work on our mind. And fascinating, the neuro researchers are proving this is true, that we can rewire the brain. We don't have to say, hey, this is who I am, or I can never be that way. This is who I am. No, it's always who we choose to be. We don't have to react when we're angry and to have an angry outburst or an explosion, especially with loved ones, and with anyone. Now, Malcolm Gladwell talks about in work, we tend to be more professional. Marshall Goldsmith talks about that as well. So at work, we tend to be more professional. We're on guard, right? Because we're being judged. We want to be the good employee. We want to get promoted. We want to climb up a ladder. What we forget in this life is that nothing from the outside validates who we are. No titles, not anything we own or the books we've written or the letters we have to after our name. I mean, are they a good thing? Yes. Why not? If you can expand your learning and your knowledge, and still, it doesn't define who you are as a person. None of that went with me, by the way. On the other side, there was no mention in my life review of all the things I had achieved. What was mentioned was, which blows my mind to this day, was only the lives I had touched, the good I had done. That all flashed before me. People I had given money to, bought sandwiches for, helped move, of course, family and friends. All the good times, I could sense their presence. People I smiled at. And I ask people today, How do you feel when you do good? And unanimously, people say, except for one guy who said, I think I feel good. Everyone else says, yeah, I feel good when I do good. Think about that. There's a reason for it. We in the Western societies especially think more about achieving something, accomplishing something, gathering treasures and money and homes. And think about how many people have all that and yet they're very unhappy. How many do drugs, commit suicide, or even say they're not happy, that they find themselves often depressed. It's the theory that I'm talking about that nothing from the outside validates us. It has no value. What has value is the decision to live from the inside out, which means you choose joy, you choose satisfaction. And when things don't match your picture, as the Buddha said, it's desire that's the root of all suffering. What we do then is use that as a gift from life. When we don't feel fulfilled, take a break. When you feel sad, take a break. It's life urging you to realign yourself, to make a shift on the inside, that somewhere you're probably spending energy chasing something. Have you ever heard athletes, when they're interviewed after a fantastic performance, say this? You know, what changed in my performance was I decided to let the game come to me. You can be an observer of your life and let life come to you and learn to enjoy whatever shows up, even if it doesn't match your picture. Because when it doesn't match your picture, your ideas, this little acorn brain will want to make you sad or angry or frustrated, angry at yourself, wanting something more, something different. When you let that go and look at life as a gift, you ask these questions. What is this here to teach me? How am I supposed to shift in life? What do I need to address? What can I change? What's different? Where's the gift in this? How about that? Just sitting, quietly asking, there's a gift in this. What is the gift? What is life urging me to do? So that one second I was in intensive care, the next second I was one with everything and nothing, one with the infinite, one with, I call it God, and people have called it the quantum field. And of course, there's many names, as Lao Tzu said, that you cannot name that which has no name. But of course, humans name it many things. It's the Buddha, the Brahma, the Abraham, the Mashua, the David, the Christ consciousness, the Muhammad consciousness. And even within those, there's many different sections or sects of all the different religions. Because that's what humans do. We want to be right. We want to say ours is the one. Now think about that. What created an infinite universe has only one way to get back to what Deepak Chopra called home, that we come from pure consciousness and we return to pure consciousness. That's where I was. I was in pure consciousness. And what mattered was only the good I had done, the lives I had touched. Not sin, not my religious beliefs. Didn't matter. Christ said, there are many rooms in my Father's house. And don't forget, at the time, he was speaking to people who had a very limited view. They had a lot of fears. They had religious people who believed that if you lived a certain way and you did certain things and you did them the right way, that's how you got back to God. We live in something that's 100% energy. It's all energy, teeming with life everywhere, even in places we haven't yet seen with all these telescopes. Teeming with life and energy everywhere. This is energy. And the one thing that you can control is your energy. And when you notice that you feel an emotion of sadness, anger, frustration, mad at yourself, mad at others, or people bother you and certain events bother you, stop. In my new book, Your Brain is Brilliant, but It's Not Always Your Friend. It's on Amazon now. I talk about managing your energy, and when you have strong emotions, look for the gift, reprogramming your mind. The mind defaults to patterns established during your first 35 years of life. Neuro researchers have now done some work on this and come to that same conclusion, that if we don't work on ourselves after the age of 35, our brain takes over and automatically responds to similar situations and people. The brain says, don't worry, we got this. You trained it. So if you get angry at certain types of people, you get sad or depressed in certain situations, you lash out in certain situations or at certain people, you've trained your mind that way. And the good news is, neuro researchers have also proven you can remind yourself, as Joe Dispenza says. You can reprogram your mind, and fMRIs, facilitated MRIs. So you're wired up to an MRI, your brain is, and they're giving you certain input. And when mostly negative people are given a way to reprogram their mind to become more positive, new neural pathways open, much like stroke victims, that you're actually reprogramming the mind. Now, the reason after the first 35 years, if you don't do work on yourself, that the brain just automatically responds, think of it like this. I'll give you two examples. Think of driving. When you first learned, you were like trying to remember everything, doing the right thing. You were very cautious. And a few years later, have you ever wondered who the heck just drove the last 5 miles, especially when you're on the highway? Your mind was somewhere else, but the driving happened. It's the same with emotional events and your responses to those events during the first 35 years. The brain just takes over, and most of society lets them. I mean, just think of the craziness in our politics. And I'm not going to speak for either side. Today, I'm registered as an independent, if you're curious, because I've been both parties, and it's craziness. I think we do need other parties. We need 3, 4, 5 parties, at least. But to stay on training the brain, our leaders, all they do is get up and point fingers at each other. I haven't heard anyone say, let's have a dialogue, let's work together for the benefit of this country, for the benefit of our constituents and our citizens. Instead, they're doing this. They're wrong. No, they're wrong. They're wrong. We're right. They're wrong. We're right. That's all they do. So nothing gets accomplished. The fascinating thing is they're modeling that behavior and expecting the general population to behave differently. Our politicians are very immature. And they're doing it for a reason. They want to have just two sides. And it's sad. And that's Acorn Brain thinking. It's very small-minded, limited thinking. My work is about expanding people's thinking into limitless thinking to model what we live in, a limitless universe that we still only know very little about. What they're discovering today is astounding with all these new telescopes. The one of the telescopes discovered an object spinning faster than a kitchen blender, 756 times a second. I'm not sure what they named it yet, and maybe I forget. I remember reading the article. I don't think it was an exoplanet, but they were defining the object they found. Totally mystified. Now, there were certain laws. They were trying to suppose how that happened. Was there a gravity vortex or something was occurring? Was there a black hole nearby that was causing it to spin? It wasn't getting sucked in. Maybe it was on the edge of that field of the energy being sucked into a black hole. But you get what I'm telling you. We have things we don't really understand. Black holes suck everything in around it. If you're a negative person, you're sucking in everyone around you. You can manage your energy. You can manage what you put out into the world. Small-minded thinkers keep feeding small-minded thoughts. And what gets fed in the universe? What gets fed in the universe grows. Whatever thought you feed in your mind grows, and it impacts your outcomes. Thomas Troward said that your outer results are because of the work on the inner. That's accountability. In other words, you have power to create your future, which is why most people believe they're thinking. That's why they believe small-minded, self-limiting thinking, because people are afraid of their power to create. They're afraid of their power to create. So most people live very small, tiny lives, wrapped up in themselves, which Ben Franklin used to call people who are all wrapped up in themselves make a very small bundle. We have a lot of very small bundles, which is okay. That's okay. I'm not making that wrong. You're always making a choice about what you're going to have in your life. So if you have a desire for something different, something greater, however you define it, something better, start with that end in mind and then work backwards. How does that kind of person show up in the world? What kind of things do they do? How is it that they create a life like that? And then surround yourself with people like that, because what gets fed grows in the universe. Think about that. Whatever gets starved dies. It withers and dies. So you have tremendous power, and it begins with taking accountability for what you've created up until now. Let's suppose it's a mess. The same power that created your mess is the same power that can create whatever you decide you want. You can choose to be anything you want to do, anything you want to be, how you want to be. Dr. James Doty, in his book Mind Magic, talks about the subconscious. And this is the second analogy I'm going to give you for understanding why the brain works the same way in the next 35 years if you don't do work on it after your first 35 years. He said, think of the brain this way, as a file system and a bloodhound. Whatever you put in the file system, the bloodhound goes looking for evidence for. Despite any evidence to the contrary, it rules out any evidence to the contrary. We see that in our leaders today. We see that in religion. We see that all over. Small-minded thinking. That's the hubris of people thinking they think like God, or whatever they call what created a universe. Imagine if you think like God. And even in the holy books, you can see where small-minded thinking came in. You can see where small-minded thinking came in. When the holy books talk about vengeance shall be mine and an angry God, that's humans get angry. Humans get angry. The energy of the universe, again, you can call it what you want. In my experience, I'm not trying to convince you of anything, but let's suppose you call it God. You really think God is interested in our petty little disagreements and fights, even in our wars? There have been people that suggest, some said they learned this in near-death experiences. So if you read and study about near-death experiences, that some of the worst people in the world have come by agreement. They came to be despicable, despised, and to do horrendous things so humanity would learn not to do those things again, right? So we can learn from people what not to do, how not to be, and we can learn from people how to be. People like Mother Teresa or Mahatma Gandhi or Martin Luther King or Rosa Parks, people that risked being very dislikable by many, many people because they came here with a passion, knowing what they were doing was going to benefit humanity, help us grow over small-minded thinking. So I could go on this topic for a long time. And this is the work I do today, is helping people first discover where they have small-minded thinking, then work on what it is that they desire, what it is they want in their life. The word desire in Latin is defined as of the Father, so of God or of the universe. You came here with a desire for a reason to return those gifts to this experience and help humanity grow. And even if it's cleaning up the environment, cleaning up your neighborhood, helping others, working in nursing homes, working in hospice, whatever it is you have a passion for, you came here for that reason. It's like life hit me with a 2x4 over 22 years ago to help me learn that that little voice in my head was not to run me. I was to learn to run it. Rainer Maria Rilke called his little voice the little hooligan, the voice in his head. And George Ivanovich Gurdjieff used to call the voice in his head the machine. And they both would ask, do you want to let the little hooligan or the machine run you? Or would you like to run it? And you can learn to do it. When you put something in your file system, stop the bloodhound by asking, is this true? It's called confirmation bias if you ignore any evidence to the contrary. If you don't question you, who will? I mean, we don't like it when other people question us. I mean, just look at politics or even look at religion. People get mad, even if it's the same religion, but different versions of the religion. Catholics and Protestants, Shias and Sunnis, Orthodox and non. We live in something amazing. We live in a miracle. And when you have small-minded thinking and you've decided you're right, what you're forgetting is how many people you're making wrong. And you're missing the fact that God is never absent. How could the creative life force that made this amazing miracle that we don't understand, a limitless universe, be small-minded? How could that be? It doesn't align. Now, if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, I'm glad to have you. Reach out to me. Email me. Steve@stevelentini.com. I'll show you how to spell my name, and I'll plug my book again. Your Brain is Brilliant, but it's not always your friend. Steve@stevelentini.com. Want to see it again? Steve@stevelentini.com. Email me and come and challenge me. I love to have dialogue. And remember, I might ask you, does that sound like small-minded thinking? Thanks. Thank you for tuning in. See you next episode. Let's do good, folks. Let's do good. Being good is great. Doing good is even better. Let's do good. Thank you.